Uh, Welcome back to the post-launch session of day 3 of this school come workshop on data analysis in cosmology and astroparticle physics, organized by ISI Kolkata. In this session, we have Professor Tuhin Ghosh as the speaker. He is a faculty member at NICER Bhubaneswar. He mostly works on different aspects of CMB, polarization, primordial gravitational waves, then galactic magnetic fields, and statistical tools in cosmology. So he'll be taking a couple of lectures and hands-on sessions on mostly on the cosmology of cosmic microwave background radiation. Okay, so to him the stage is all yours. Just to remind the participants that please keep yourself muted during the talk. So if you want to ask any question, you can write in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. It's absolutely up to the speaker to take up the questions during his lectures or at the end of the lectures. So to him, it's absolutely up to you.
Yes.
So now the stage is yours, please.
So should I put the video on or it is?
Whatever you like. No issues. You can see your slides and everything. So that's perfect.
On my video. So I'm now.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the kind introduction. So, basically, I will take 4 lectures come work on session, hand-on session on cosmic microwave background radiation. So the topic that I plan to cover is how we do cosmology with cosmic microwave background radiation. So this is, I put it, this talk in the level of undergrad students or master students so that they can understand what is going on in this field. Okay, and they also can, so in the hands-on session, it will be basically you can get I will tell you how to access the data and how to read the maps and how to plot it so that you can also get a feel of it, like how people do research in cosmic microwave background radiation. Okay, so I will take 2 lectures today and tomorrow, like first half, and then 1.5 session is for hand-on session. And then I have another talk in the next week where I will discuss what are the secondary science we can do with the cosmic microwave background radiation experiments. Okay, so basically our goal is to study cosmology using CMB, but CMB is not a only probe to study cosmology. There are other probes. Okay, and when we set up a CMB experiment, we can get other things for free, which is some are for cosmological importance, some are we can study galactic astrophysics. So I will cover that part in my last lecture. Okay, so let me start. So the cosmology, so basically probably you know, sorry, this quote is taken from Wikipedia. So cosmology is a branch of astronomy concerned with the study of the origin and evolution of the universe from the Big Bang to today and into the future. So basically what we are trying to understand, what is the current stage of the universe, how it evolved from the starting to now, and what will be its future. Okay. So the physical cosmology is a scientific study of universe origin, its large-scale structure, and its dynamics, and its ultimate fate, as well as the laws of science that governs this area. So, broadly, in the broad sense, we want to understand what is going to happen to our universe in future and what was in the past, and what is the different ingredient or the species present in the current universe. Okay, so the latest CMB experiment, what we have, our basic understanding of CMB. So I will come to what is CMB later, but this cosmic microwave background radiation, we have a short name for that, which is actually it is CMBR, but we can call as CMB. So we drop the radiation part of it. So it all comes from this experiment called Planck satellite. Okay, so this was launched in 2009, and it stopped working in 2013. Okay, so it works basically for 4.5 years. So this image, Okay, so I'm not able to show the pointer, but basically this big image is showing the Planck telescope. So it has 1 meter diameter. So it's like optical astronomy. We have a primary mirror, secondary mirror. So these experiments are done in microwave frequencies. Okay, so we don't have CCDs or charge coupled device to image the sky. So what we have is this horns. Okay, so this small image is showing those horn antennas. So it's basically small. So this is in microwave frequency. So we can collect the number of photons coming per unit area, per unit time, per unit solid angle in using these horn antennas. So that gives us the intensity, and also we can use the linear polarization to calculate whether this light is polarized or not. So this is the focal plane of Planck. So you can see there are a lot of detectors. So all these horn antennas are at different shape and sizes. Okay. So basically it depends on what frequency we are trying to measure things. So Planck is not a single frequency instrument. Okay. So like in optical, there is mostly it has some band pass, which is in optical band. But here we are targeting at different frequency bands. So with Planck, we are targeting from 30 gigahertz to 857 gigahertz. Why we need this many frequency? I will come to that later. But we want to study basically the universe at different wavelength to extract this cosmic microwave background radiation. Okay, and originally it was named something else. Well, later on in astronomy field, basically it's easy to remember the names we associate with some scientist. And the CMB has a Planck body spectrum, so that's why this satellite was named after Max Planck. Okay, so he was a very famous scientist, which you study of black body radiations. So there are a lot of contribution of Max Planck. Okay, so this CMB experiment. So what is the goal? So its main goal is to study this cosmic microwave background radiation, temperature and anisotropies. Okay, so to its fundamental limits. So usually when we measure something, it has instrumental noise, and we cannot measure things, measure the signal within that instrumental noise. So the idea here is to measure things up to the limit, fundamental limit. So what is the fundamental limit? So basically we have one universe, or we can map one sky. Okay, so we ideally, if you have we can go to multiple locations and measure the CMB, we can get a statistical property of the universe. But it's not possible to move from the Earth. So what we can do is we can have only one sky. So from one sky, we are extracting the information. So because of that, there is something called cosmic variance limit. Okay, so we cannot beat that limit. So we have some error will come because we have only one sky. So the idea of instrument is to measure CMB up to that much accuracy. Okay. So it has an angular resolution, which is 5 arcminute, and it also measures polarization. So intensity is one way to constrain cosmology, but we can also extract, we can also get information about polarization. Okay, and it can break some degeneracy between the parameters. So it was, the polarization was not the main target. So it was put there, and there was a lot of nice results coming from the polarized detectors. Okay. So basically this image is showing it is artistic image, it's not a real image. So basically you can see sun, earth, and this telescope. So this is in Lagrange point. So all the CMB experiments, so usually they are put in Lagrange point 2, so that it has a stable orbit, and it moves. This Lagrange point is not a fixed point, so it moves with the Earth rotation. So in some sense, it will cover the whole sky in 6 months. Okay. So it has two kind of detectors, because it was a European project. So there was different countries which plays a role. So the low frequency instrument was mainly led by Italian group, and then there was a high frequency instrument. Okay. So this, so basically there are 9 frequency bands starting from 30 gigahertz to 857 gigahertz. Okay. So let me see. Yeah, so I think it works. Okay. So yeah, so these pointers are useful. So this basically it has this frequency coverage from 30 gigahertz to 857 gigahertz, and there are 9 frequency bands. So 30, 44, 70, 100, 143, 270, 353, 545, and 87. Okay. So how this is, so why 9 and not more than 9 or less than 9? Basically, in this frequency bands, there are other contamination and we have to get rid of it. So ideally, you want more frequency bands to better understand, better extract the CMB signal. Okay. But more, so this is the basically focal plane of the instrument. So you have to put a lot of horn antennas, and earlier it was because the space is limited in this focal plane. So because of that, you cannot put many horn antennas there. And then there is a readout. So you have to read that signal also. So it's a difficult problem. So, so in the Planck mission, they put limited number of detectors, which is ideal to extract this CMB anisotropies. So this is a 3rd generation space CMB mission, and it has some contribution or significant contribution from NASA, mostly in the instrumental part. Okay. So why CMB is important? So basically, probably you see this image. So this is one left-hand side is before Planck. Okay. So what our current understanding of universe is that, so this pie chart is showing the energy budget of the universe or energy density. Okay. So what we know is 72.8% is dark matter. Okay. Then 22.7% is coming from dark matter, and whatever we made up of, like whatever we see, star, galaxies, interstellar medium, so they only contribute to 4.5%. Okay, so only 4.5% we know, and rest part, it is basically unknown territory. Now the particle physics groups are actually searching for dark matter. So there are many indirect evidence of dark matter, and we don't know how this particle are made up of. So particle physics accelerators, like Large Hadron Colliders, they are trying to find new particles which can be a candidate for dark matter. So what we know is that it is non-relativistic. Okay, it does not interact with matter much. Okay, so that's why there is a name, cold dark matter. Okay, so the dark matter can be warm dark matter or hot dark matter or cold dark matter. Okay, so this was the so from the CMB observation. So basically, my goal is to, at the end of this like tomorrow lecture, at least I tell you how these numbers are derived. Okay, so this was before Planck. Now with the Planck mission, we can get very precise numbers. So we know that number changes. So 4.5 becomes 4.9. Dark matter contribution becomes larger from 22.7% to 26.8%, and the contribution of dark energy becomes less. Okay, so this is the power of CMB experiments, where we can get very precise numbers. Okay, so broadly, if you think about it, 5%, 4.5 and 4.9 does not make sense, make much difference, but we can get very precise number using cosmic microwave background radiation. Okay, so this is my outline of my talk. So I will talk about first what is cosmic microwave background radiation. So there was a very, it's like a crash course, like how this emission was produced and what we measured now. Then I talked a bit about Planck mission, but it's basically how it scans the sky and what it measures and what are the different results it can get. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And then I will, is mostly tomorrow's lecture where I talk about cosmology results from Planck legacy release. Like what are the main results, and then what are the different results we can extract from Planck mission, and the open question. So is everything resolved, or we understand the universe? Is not. There are many open questions which we'll address, which so that's why there are new CMB missions are planned. Okay, from Indian side also, we propose to ISRO future generation CMB experiment to address those questions. And if you're interested, all these Planck collaboration papers are available on this website. So you can have a quick look at those, and the data is also public. So we can do some hands-on session with this publicly available data. Okay. So like standard model of particle physics, we have a standard model of cosmology. So what is called cosmological paradigm, where what we know is that the universe is expanding. It also accelerating, which is coming from the supernova data. So this acceleration is coming mostly from dark energy. So, what the current understanding cosmological model is the lambda CDM model. Okay, so this lambda corresponding to dark energy or vacuum energy, and this CDM is the cold dark matter. So what we know that this dark matter are non-relativistic. Okay, so if the universe is expanding, which is basically the Hubble law, so it means that in the early time it must be small, and if it is small, it has to be dense. Okay, and in the temperature, it has a higher temperature. So when the universe expands, okay, this CMB photons, they lose energy and it cools down. Okay, so currently the temperature of the CMB photon is 2.7 Kelvin. Okay, so this is the cartoon picture of the universe. Okay, so this is taken from NASA website. So basically, whatever we understand about the universe is depicted in this figure. So what we are here, so this image is, we are showing a Max Planck image. So it's basically we are here, okay, and we are, what we see on the sky, we see stars, galaxies, everything, okay. So now we know that some say nearby star is 4.3 light years away. Okay. So now it takes 4.3 light years to come the light from the nearest star to us. Okay. So it means that whenever we probe things at the current time, it's not at the current time, because from the Einstein's special theory of relativity, we know that the information cannot travel faster than the light. So whatever we are probing now or getting the signal from that nearest star, it comes when it was 4.3 years light years younger than the current age of the universe. Okay. Now the galaxies are further away. So okay, so we can suppose one galaxy is like 1 million years. It takes light to travel 1 million years. So we are probing things backward in time. Okay, so that image is basically showing that there are different sources which take some amount of time the light to come to us. Okay, so whatever we can measure, if we know the distance, we can tell how far in the past the signal is coming. Okay, so we can probe up to certain point, which is listed here as epoch of regeneration. Okay, so this is something, the stage where the first stars are found. Okay, so the universe becomes ionized so this is something which we covered in 2 lectures. So this is very hot topic now, epoch of regeneration, which India is part of it, which is square kilometer array. And the idea is to understand the physics of this time scale. So this happens at redshift of 9 and 10. So redshift basically gives idea that how far that that object is from us. Okay. So before that, there is nothing. So let me start from the beginning. So this part we don't understand. So there was something, maybe Big Bang happened. And after some seconds, after like Planck scale, 10 to the minus 36 seconds. So this, so universe expand like to large extent, which we called as inflation. Okay. And then after inflation, so first the nucleons forms, then the nuclei, then the atoms form. Okay, so there was all these things happen in this white region. Okay, and when it was expanding, the universe cools down also. Okay, the temperature of the universe falls down. Then at some stage, okay, so the first atom was formed, the hydrogen atom. So before that, I will show you cartoon, but basically there are proton, electron, all the particle physics, you know, neutrinos, muons. So they are all in plasma state. Okay, and at some point, the universe becomes when it cools down. So they try to form like the atoms or nuclei things. Okay, so first like proton and neutrons they combine, electron they combine and form a atom. So before that, the photons, so always colliding with this plasma, and it so we cannot see those because the mean free path of that photons was very less. But once the atoms are formed, so there was no free electron to scatter the photons. So these photons are coming directly towards us. So whatever we can observe is through photons. Like we have a detector, we count how many photons are there, then we can image that and see what is going on there. So basically we can see only up to this part, which is at a ratio of 1100. Okay, so before that we cannot see because the photon has a mean free path very less. So we can only see this part. So that's why this name is called cosmic microwave background radiation or the last cutting surface. So this is last cutting surface because it is the last time the photons scatter with the electrons. And after that, there was nothing there. So the photons coming free streaming towards us. Okay. And the assumption is that these photons, while coming from this surface to us, it does not destroy or like new photons are created. So it retains the memory of the whatever thermal history at this time. Okay. Only thing is that the photon lose energy because the temperature of the universe falls down. So we can backtrack and calculate what is the temperature at that time. Okay. And to map this image. So this is of cosmic origin. So that's why the first name is cosmic. Okay. This radiation, because it cools down, it peaks around, so the temperature now is 3 Kelvin or 2.7 Kelvin. So it peaks around 300 gigahertz. So there is a Wien displacement law that you read about it. So there is a Planck body function, and so it depends only on the temperature. So once we know the temperature, you can calculate at what frequency it peaks. Like for sun, we know that temperature is 6000 Kelvin. So that it peaks around the optical wavelength. So that's why we see the sun as close to red. Okay. So for CMB, it is peaks around not in optical wavelength, in microwave frequency. That's why the name microwave. The background radiation, because this is the last radiation, because before that there is nothing. So this is only the it's a background. Everything from there to now is all we call as foreground radiation. Okay, so this is in some sense is a primordial radiation or relic radiation. Okay, and it captures what happened in this phase. Like it keeps the memory of what happened from inflation to the formation of the first atom. Okay. So, so once the CMB are formed, but you need like stars, galaxy, all those things to be formed. So this CMB has some tiny fluctuations, and because of the gravitational instability, so where there are dense region, they will form structures. So it takes some time to form the structure. So there is a dark age, so where there is nothing there. And after that, the first stars are formed, and then galaxies are formed, then galaxy clusters are formed. It was like that. Yes, so you're right, Taufik. So it is 2.7 Kelvin now. Okay. So, but we know that when the universe expands, it cools down. So it roughly goes as 1 over scale factor. Okay. And the scale factor is roughly inversely proportional to the redshift. Okay. So if it is 3 Kelvin now, if I calculate what is the temperature at the last current surface, it will be 3000 Kelvin. Okay. Yes. So 2.7 times 1 plus 1100. You're right. So that is the temperature, but it is based on the thing that T is inversely proportional to 1 over A. What we measure now is 2.7 Kelvin. We don't measure 3000 Kelvin. Okay. Given 2.7 Kelvin now, we can infer that at ratio of 1100, the temperature is 3000 Kelvin. Okay. Okay. So, so let me go through a quick animation where trying to tell you what happens. Okay. So basically, so this lower axis is the scale. Okay. So we are here. So current age of the universe is 13.7 billion years. So for round off, let's take it 10 billion years. Okay. And the CMB was formed at like 300,000 years. Okay. So this, okay. So basically currently we have, what we see is neutral hydrogen atom and we have low energy photons. Okay. So low energy means, you know, H is equal to, E energy is equal to H nu. So low energy means low nu, okay, low frequency. It means that mode wavelength. So wavelength mode means I'm representing by red, okay. And the high energy photons will be represented in blue. So in the past, so these photons have more energy. So the universe at high temperature. So when we are talking about the scale, which is 10 to the power 3 to 10 to the power 9 Kelvin. Okay. So this time, so this photons has large energy. Okay. So then it will interact with photons and electrons. So they are all in thermal equilibrium. Okay. So they will not allow the atom to form. So they will just, because it has high energy photons, they will kick off the protons and neutrons. And this, so all these particles, the elementary particles are in plasma state. Okay. So at high temperature, there is a hydrogen and helium plasma plus photons, which we call as photon baryon fluid. Okay. And these free electrons have high cross section to photons. So you can, so there is something called reaction rate. Okay. And there is a Hubble radius. So if the reaction rate is much, much larger than the Hubble parameter at that time, it keeps the system in thermal equilibrium. Okay. So once we know the Friedman equation, you can calculate what is Hubble time at different epoch. Okay. And the reaction rates, so it's basically Thomson scattering. So we can calculate what is the reaction rate, which depends on the number density of the electron, the Thomson scattering cross section, and the velocity of the electrons. Okay. So at that time, basically they all in plasma state. So they are all interacting very the mean free path is very less, and it makes the system in thermal equilibrium. Okay. So then at some point, because the universe goes through this temperature change, so universe cools down to 3000 Kelvin. Okay. So just a rough number. So what happens is that at that time, so this electrons start forming an atom with the protons. Okay. So then there are no so there are no free electrons to scatter those photons. So these photons are now free stream towards us because there is nothing free electrons because they all form a atom, and these photons they don't have that much energy to kick off the electron from this stable orbit. Okay. So these photons, now they some way they find the right direction and to come towards us. So we are detecting the photon, and we have a lot of telescopes either in space, which is Planck, or there are a lot of ground-based telescopes like BICEP experiment, Keck, South Pole Telescope. So these detectors are detecting these photons. So this example, I give it for one set of like location, but it is actually happening from like all over it. So all this scattering will give me photons. And so that is basically cosmic microwave background radiation. So what we see is the photons coming from this large scattering surface. Okay. So to first approximation, we can measure the temperature. It comes out to be 2.7 Kelvin on the mean, but there is a tiny fluctuation on top of it. So this fluctuation is order of 10 to the minus 5. Okay. So 2.7 is the mean temperature. On top of it, there is a fluctuation of like tens of microkelvin. Okay. So this fluctuation, both mean and the temperature fluctuation, both are important. Okay. So mean temperature gives me how many photons are coming. Okay. And how much it contributes to the energy budget of the universe. So those things we can measure from the mean temperature. And this fluctuations gives me what is the dynamics of the universe from here to now, and what are the cosmological parameters we can derive from this CMB fluctuations. Okay. So basically the idea is that this CMB is like a baby picture of the universe. So we have a camera, right? So if you have a camera, you can like earlier used to become like 1 megapixel camera or 5 megapixel camera. So you basically, if you have high resolution camera, you can capture better and better image. So in the cosmic microwave background experiments, something similar happened. So there were like 3 generations of experiments starting from COBE, WMAP, and Planck. So every 10 years it was launched. So COBE was launched in 1992. So this the goal was to measure this fluctuation level. So the mean temperature was measured by Penzias and Wilson in way back in 1965. But before COBE, it was not clear what is the fluctuation level. Okay, so people thought that maybe order of -3, they did not find it. Then order of 10 to the -4, they did not find it. So then go down and go down, we can get ultimately COBE map measure this fluctuation to very high accuracy, of which is 10 to the -5. But it cannot, so the resolution is not very good enough so that we cannot resolve the structures here. And this resolution of this structure or the power spectrum matters for the cosmological parameter estimation. Then after 10 years, WMAP satellite was launched. So it is named after scientist Wilkinson. Okay, so who is leading that project, and he died before the launch of the experiment. So that's why original name was MAP. So it was Microwave Anisotropy Probe, and later on it was named after him. Okay, so it measures things better than COBE, but it's not up to the fundamental limit. Then the Planck came in picture, and it measures the CMB fluctuation to very high accuracy. So something similar happens now with something called CMB B mode detection, where we don't know the level, and this CMB B mode is basically gives me handle on the primordial gravitational waves or the inflation. Okay, so this inflation, what energy scale it happened, and what are the driving field for that. So that's why people are looking for signature of primordial gravitational waves, but but we don't know what is the level of it. And so basically there are generation of telescope from the ground which is searching for this CMB B modes. Okay. So this picture is showing like the evolution of the CMB temperature detection of CMB from different times. So first was detected by by Penzias and Wilson. Okay, so it was a uniform temperature, but you can see that there are this white regions. So these are basically galactic emission from our own galaxy. So our galaxy also emit on those on these CMB frequencies. Okay. So what we measure is usually the background emission, and from like the cartoon picture I showed, there is a background contribution, and whatever between us and that surface, if they also become make significant contribution to this frequency, we will detect that also. So this is the galactic plane. So then COBE was launched. So it measures the CMB fluctuation, but on top of it, there is this bright galaxy. So usually we need this many frequencies to actually avoid this red region and try to measure the CMB to get a much accurate value of CMB. So this COBE mission, the angular resolution was 7 degree. Okay, so it's inverse of like megapixel thing. So if you have a low resolution camera, so we get an image, but very low quality. So we can probe something, but not to constrain all the cosmology to very high accuracy. Then WMF was launched. It has angular resolution is 15 arcminute. It get a much better map. So you can see, start seeing all those, resolve all those structures, not very hazy ones. And we can see the galactic plane also now. And the last one is Planck. So now you can see that you don't see those red region because what people do is for showing, they just impaint. Okay, so you use the statistical information which is outside. Okay, and you fill up in the galactic plane region and say this is the CMB. So this is whatever we see in the galactic plane region is not an actual signal. This is something called impainting. Okay. So this is just for visual purpose, but most of the analysis when we do, we mask this red region and do the analysis from this high latitude sky region. Okay. So this CMB, so first thing is to measure the temperature of it. Okay. So now we know it is 2.725 Kelvin. So so COBE mission, what they do is they measure basically the intensity, which is units of Menajansky per steradian at different wavelengths. So starting from some 50 gigahertz to 150 gigahertz. Okay. So it peaks around 180 gigahertz. So this is the peak of the CMB frequency. So so it has a, so the error bar is shown here. So this, when you plot the error bar on the measurement, it is very small. It is thinner than the, smaller than the line thickness. Okay. So to very high accuracy, this CMB has a black body spectrum. Okay. Yeah, and from that spectrum, we can measure the temperature, which is 2.7 Kelvin. And this is the plot showing the lower panel, showing that once we take this 2.7 Kelvin, if you, then you see what is the deviation for each point. So it, we don't see any significant deviation. So for each frequency, we can get 2.7 Kelvin. So yeah, so I explained that basically with the Planck also, there is a central bulge region. But what we do is usually we know where this bulge is. We can mask it and impaint with the outside region. Okay, so in this image, just 1 minute. Yeah. So this bulge region is supposed to be here, but we can just remove it and fill it up this red region with the statistical property of the outside region into this central region. Okay, so that is what is done here. So this is something called imprinting. Okay, so it is there. So I will show you the Planck images where this red bulge region, which is the galactic emission, will be there.
Sir, I was disconnected and then connected again, so I couldn't hear you. What you have said.
Okay, so now it is clear.
Yes, sir. Now I'm connected.
Yeah, after the let me explain the Planck things, then it will be probably get clear. So so basically it is just a so what we measured is the CME monopole term. So it is like 2.7 Kelvin everywhere. Okay. There are galactic emissions, so we should not look in the galaxy where these white regions are there, but outside it is mostly this green region. Okay. So basically this is a mean temperature. Okay. So once we remove this mean temperature, which is 2.7 Kelvin, what we see is not those fluctuations. What we see is this dipole kind of pattern. So there are regions which are hot, which is blue, and there is a region which is red, and the other region is the blue. Okay. So this is basically this dipole pattern is due to our motion with respect to the galaxy. Okay, because Earth is moving around the sun is moving around the galaxy, our galaxy is moving towards Andromeda is moving towards Virgo constellation. Okay, so because of this motion, like when we are not at rest. Okay, so that's why due to our motion we see this dipole kind of pattern, which is very dominant one, which is order of 1 part in 1000. So it's order of 10 to the minus 3 level. But this is dipole, so we can fit with the basically 3 parameters. One is the amplitude of the dipole, and the 2 parameters are the direction of the dipole. Okay. So we can remove this dipole, and what we left is those fluctuations. Okay. So this fluctuation, so to first idea, it looks like random, but it's not actually random. So you can see a clustering effect. So there is a region where it is red, and then there is a region where it is blue. So this fluctuation is order of 10 to the minus 5 Kelvin, or we can say tens of Kelvin, tens of micro Kelvin. Okay, and so basically what we measure is those fluctuations. So whatever cosmological parameters we want to derive is from this image. That is the goal. Okay. So this, yeah. So it looks statistical isotropic. That is same characteristic scale in visible everywhere. And this scale is plotted from plus minus 100 microkelvin. So if very red is there, okay. So something like this point, which is like maybe 80 or 90 microkelvin, and something which is very blue is minus 80 to minus 90 kelvin. And everything is lying between plus minus 100 microkelvin. Okay. So the Planck was, because with the each generation of telescope, we want to see how much we gain. So it means that it has an improvement in sensitivity, which is 10 in sensitivity. Okay. So if you integrate more, the sensitivity increases as square root of time. But with Planck, just 1 year observation. So basically 1 year of observation of Planck is equivalent to 10 years of WM observation. So that is very crude way of understanding the sensitivity. So basically the detectors are like sensitivity such high accuracy that we, with a small amount of time integration, we can get enough sensitivity, which with previous generation, we have to wait for 10 years to get that much sensitivity. Okay. So this temperature traces the gravitational potential at the time of recombination when the universe was 400,000 years. So this number depends on the redshift. So it is sometimes I say 300,000 years and sometimes say 4,000 light years. So these are all same in cosmological scale. Okay. So this is the image or the animation showing how the Planck scans the sky. So in this kind of experiment, the challenge is to measure signal which is not noise limited. Okay, so it should be systematic limited. So we want to measure things where the noise is subdominant. So what is important is how it scans the sky. So what is doing is here, it scans in this great circle, okay, and it is looking away from the sun. Okay, so it cannot look in the sun because the sun is very bright. It can damage the detectors. So it is looking away from the sun and trying to make this image. Okay, so this is basically looking at all, so it's basically looking at the sphere. Okay, so your radius is fixed here. Okay, so which is whatever it is coming between us and that direction. And the theta and phi goes from, so theta goes from minus pi by 2. So this is like a theta axis. So it is like a latitude. So this is in galactic coordinate system. So the theta is 0 in the galactic plane. Okay, so it means that we're looking in the galaxy. And then this is away from the galaxy. So we are looking outside the galactic plane in the northern hemisphere, and the down is the southern hemisphere. Okay, so this is theta and this is phi. Okay, so this is 0, 90, 180. Okay, and this end is same. Okay, so usually if you see a football, you cannot see the other side, right? So you can see only the first half of it. So this is something called Mollweite projection, which is very convenient, where it is like opening up this football so that we can see what is in the other side. Okay. So this point and this point is effectively same. So that is the longitude, and then it goes to 360. Okay. Or otherwise you can say that from 0 to 180, and this is like minus 180. Okay. So the Planck, what it measures is this target this 9 frequency from 30 gigahertz to 857 gigahertz. So now you can see in these images, you can see this bulge region in all images. So this basically CMB is coming from early universe. So it should have some fluctuation. It should not have this correlated structure. So this is coming from our galaxy. And the CMB follows a black body spectrum of 2.7 Kelvin. Okay. So it means that in thermodynamic units, it should see the same temperature in all the frequency bands. Okay. Now we can see this red bulge region. It is frequency dependent. So each is like at 30 gigahertz, you see a bigger bulge, but at 100 gigahertz, this bulge is less. Okay. So it means that something which is varying is not CMB. So it is mostly coming from our own galaxy. Okay. So there are different emission mechanism which is probing like different physics. So one is like at low frequency at 30 gigahertz. So this is close to radio frequency. What is the dominant emission is mostly coming from synchrotron emission. So this is basically cosmic ray electron, which is gyrating around the galactic magnetic field, and it gives rise to this synchrotron emission. So basically, if I can subtract this CMB and study this synchrotron emission, I can tell what is the number density of cosmic rays. I can tell what is the magnetic field strength of our own galaxy. So it was usually people say that it is order of microgauss. We can actually derive those numbers by studying this emission. So this is for low frequency. At the intermediate frequency, there are this bright region which shows up. So this is coming from H2 region, which is contributing to something called thermal Bremsstrahlung radiation or free radiation. Okay, so this radiation dominates in this intermediate frequency range. Okay, and we can study the electron temperature of this medium in this in these locations. And then at high frequency, there are thermal dust emission, which is there are small dust particles in the interstellar medium. Okay, and this dust particle usually absorbs the light in optical wavelength and they emit in microwave frequencies. So they emit this bright emission, which mostly dominate in infrared frequencies. Okay, but in this, at least in this frequency, it still dominates. So up to 217, we can see whatever emission is mostly coming from this dust emission, and like at 57 we don't see any CMB, so we can only see this bright emission from the dust. So all these frequencies are important to basically understand the dust emission on those high frequency and subtract to get the CMB. So we are interested in CMB to very high accuracy. Okay. And instead of CMB temperature, we can also measure the polarization of CMB. Okay, so the polarizations, probably you studied that. So there are 4 Stokes parameter: I, Q, U, and V. Okay, so I represent intensity, or the total amount of photons are coming from that source. Q and U traces the linear polarization. So it can be, light can be linearly polarized or circularly polarized or elliptically polarized. So if it is linearly polarized, it is traced by this Stokes parameter Q and U. And so which direction it is polarized is captured by this Q and U. If it is horizontally polarized or vertically polarized, then it is Stokes Q. There should not be any U. But if it is making 45-degree angle or minus 45-degree angle, so that is mostly Stokes U. So this is basically we can image the Stokes Q and U at those frequencies. Okay. And in polarization, the maps looks very different than what we see in the intensity. Okay. So basically in this experiment, so the Planck finishes is survey in 2013, but it took almost 5 years to release the first polarization maps, full sky. Okay, so this was released in 2018. Okay, so the problem was, so why it takes 5 years? So these instruments are very sensitive. So so there are systematic effects which can artificially produce like a signal. Okay, so they can be mimic like a signal, and we can infer a wrong cosmological parameters from that. So the idea is that we can do many cross checks. So we can scan like every 6 months and come back after every after 6 months, we can scan the same point. And when you subtract the 2 data point, it should be noise. Okay, so it's like a random fluctuation. So what is shown here when it is done, like odd and even survey. So first odd means from first 0 to 6 months, we can make a sky map. And then 6 months to 12 months, we can make another sky map. Okay. If we subtract it, we don't see like a noise-like structure. So there are these bright blue, red regions. So it means that there are systematic effects which we don't understand. So the most of the effort goes on to trying to minimize those systematic effects. So like this image, so this is at 143 at Q and U. Usually for temperature, it's not a problem, but for mostly for Q and U, for polarization, it is a very important factor. So now it looks like noise-like structure, but earlier there was like this blue-red patterns, which is something called bandpass leakage. So this intensity can leak into Stokes Q and U. And if you don't have very good control over systematics, it can like, there is no way we can get rid of those things, and it can bias the cosmological parameters. Okay, so this is basically in this kind of experiment, the most of the time people spend is trying to get cleaner and cleaner maps which pass through all this test, null test. Okay, so when we subtract to like odd and even mission maps, or divide the data into 2 halves and subtract it, it should be consistent with the noise. Okay, so now, so like I show you the maps, okay, and I tell you there are different components. So there are emission, which is coming, which is called synchrotron emission. There is the free emission, spinning dust, thermal dust. So each one, we roughly from the measurement, we can roughly know what is the frequency dependence of that. Okay. And once we know what is the physics of that, we can see if they contribute to the polarization or not. Okay. So for polarization, this last two bands are not there. So it only measures from 32 to 53 gigahertz. And for polarization, there are only two contributions, synchrotron and Thermal. Maybe there are others, but we don't detect it till now. So it is like subdominant. So the idea is that, so we see these 9 frequency maps. So some way we have to combine them to extract the CMB signal. Okay. So there are many methods to do that. Okay. So in the Planck mission, they settle with 4 broad methods. Okay. So the idea is that, see, yeah. So you see this 9 frequency maps. So the idea is that we need to remove this red region and whatever galaxy is contributing, even something at 100 gigahertz, we don't see them at high latitude. Maybe it is there. So we have to remove them and make a clean CMB map. Okay. So that is one of the hands-on session where you can try to collect, get these maps, make it plot like this, and try to, I will tell you what a simple component separation method where you can get rid of this red region and make a very clean CMB map. So we want to do this, but in some way we don't want to bias our analysis result. Okay, so that's why this back, yeah. So that's why we need different ways to extract the CMB. So what is done in the Planck is they apply 4 methods. So 2 are like blind methods where you don't assume anything about the photons. So you don't assume anything about the red region. You say that we know that CMB is black body spectrum. Using only that information, we can extract a CMB map. So this is method called as NILC and the 7. Okay. Other 2 methods where you can say that, okay, we know these are the different components, like synchrotron emission is there, free emission is there, dust emission is there. We can use the information of, or the property or the frequency dependence of that emission and put in some algorithm and try to extract that, extract the CMB. So the advantage of this method is that first 2 method is that we, on the site, we can also get a map of synchrotron emission, dust emission, and whether to see them and see whether they make sense or not. Okay. This other 2 method, it only extract the CMB. It does not tell you about another emission. So that is the basically for cosmology. Even if you could take CMB, it is enough. But it's good to have these other maps so that we can also do cosmology with those other maps and to see whether they are consistent with the measurements or not. Okay. So let me skip this. So that is basically the goal. So we have to combine this 9 frequency maps in such a way that we can get a very clean CMB map. Okay. But this red region, I think in the galactic plane, it is not easy to remove it. So whatever, this is our goal, but still there are residuals in the galactic plane, and they are removed by imprinting. Okay. And this other model dependent method, the advantage is that we can get CMB, and also we can get the map of different emissions. So these are map of synchrotron emission, which we get, map of Fifi emission. There's something called spinning dust. So before Planck, people did not know about spinning dust. There was some hint about spinning dust. So these are dust particles which are spinning very fast. They are small dust particles. So they emit in this microwave frequency. So we can get, now we know that there is a spinning dust emission, and there are many people are working on the physics of spinning dust emission, why the emission is like that, and trying to model that. Then there is a thermal dust emission. There is something called CO line emission, which is carbon monoxide line. And they have different line transition, like 1 to 0, 2 to 1, and 3 to 2. So we can get those emission maps also. So that is the advantage of this method, where we can get the maps of all the different components. And we can vary the emission law parameters. And we can do in a Bayesian way, where we can fit all those parameters in the Planck channels, and we can extract those maps. Okay. So this is the basically showing the temperature map from 4 different algorithms. So broadly, you can see they are not much different, but you can see this galactic decibels in this maps. So in some method, it can clean it to by high accuracy. Some method, it is not cleaned. So then we are not sure if this method is better than the other. So usually all the galactic planes regions are masked. So usually all the CMA analysis is mostly done with 90% of the sky. So like 10% of the sky is removed. So we are only take this high latitude sky. So masking is mostly done in this galactic plane region. Okay, so this is a map. Okay, so it has some fluctuation. Okay, but what we will do with that? Okay, because our ultimate goal is to measure, study cosmology, or measure the cosmological parameter, or at least tell this is how much dark matter is there, or how much dark energy is there, or how much baryons are there. That is our goal, right? So what we do is we take this temperature fluctuation map, delta T. Okay, we can divide by the mean temperature, or we don't divide, it is effectively same. Okay, so we take this, so let's take the convention followed here. So we take this fluctuation map, divide by the mean temperature. Okay, and so this is the fluctuation map. So we do a Fourier decomposition of it. So Fourier decomposition for any signal, you can do that because it is defined on the sphere. So the best basis to decompose this kind of signal is the spherical harmonics, which is YLM. Okay. So then when we do this decomposition, we get this basis coefficient, which is ALM. So this T represents the temperature. We can do same for Stokes Q and U. Okay. Once we have this basis coefficient, we can calculate the power spectrum. Okay. So this CL basically says how much power is there at different angular scales. In some sense, so this image, if you draw circles randomly over the sky, so in that circle, you fix the angular separation. Okay, so you take the radius fixed, and you compute what is the RMS fluctuation from that. And you, for a fixed radius, for all the possible combination, you take the average. That is basically CL. Okay. So, so we can probe at different angular scales. So L is equal to 2, 3, 4, 20, 15. How much power it is contributing. If it is like a white noise, it should have power, equal power in all the scales. So that's why we call it as white noise. So this CL versus, if I plot CL versus L, it should be a flat line. Okay. Now for CMB, when we do that, we don't see flat line. We see this nice curve. Okay. So this, so let me explain. So this red points are the data points. Okay. And there is a 1 sigma error bar associated with each data points. And this solid line is the model. Okay. So this is the lambda CDM model with 6 parameters. So basically it nicely goes through all the data points. And you can see, and when you go to larger and larger L or smaller angular scale, we can get better estimations. So the error bars are less. So it means that in that smaller scale means smaller radius. So you can put a lot of smaller radius. So you can beat the noise or the cosmic variance, and you get a very accurate answer. But if you put a bigger radius, so suppose 18 or say 50-degree radius, so you don't have much options. Okay, so you have limited number of independent 50-degree radius circles you can put. Okay, so you get bigger error bar at low ends. But still, given the error bars, this model is nicely going through all the data parts. So from this, so this is called angular power spectrum of the CMB. And from that power spectrum, we can derive the cosmological parameters. Okay. So just to give you an idea, what was before Planck. So Planck, it gives the result in 2018, but it was planned around 1992. Okay. So that time, we don't know how this power spectrum looked like. Okay. So before 2003, okay, this is pre-WMAP era. So it was, you see there are different atoms from the ground, there are balloon experiments, and they think that the error bars are very large. So they don't know exactly where, like what is the best cosmological model. Okay, so the error bars are very, very large to constrain the cosmology. Okay. But with WMAP data, when it came in 2003, the prediction was that with the Planck mission is that we can get very tiny error bars like that. So that was a prediction in 2005. It was before the launch. The launch was in 2009. So 2005, they make a prediction that it should look like this. And in 2018, when it collected data, so after 13 years, it is perfectly matching with the prediction. Okay. So it is basically saying that once we have a good understanding of the model, the data, like it's consistent with the standard model of cosmology. People are still looking for new physics where they are trying to see if there are something which is deviating from this data set. So like there, you can see that there are some points here. So usually if it is statistical noise, it go up and down around the mean line, but there are set of points which are below the best fit line. So it can be an evidence of some new physics. Okay. So CMB is also linearly polarized. So we can study CMB in, we can put polarizers and study the CMB polarization. So CMB polarization is important because if we have two independent probes, like CMB temperature and polarization, we can break some of the degeneracy. So one of the parameter is the epoch of reionization, when it happened. So CMB temperature is not enough to constrain that parameter, epoch of reionization. But if you have a CMB polarization, we can combine these two data set, the temperature and polarization, and constrain when this epoch of reionization happened. So that's why it's important to study epoch of reionization also. Okay. So why the CMB is linearly polarized? So there is something called this Thomson scattering. So you can make polarized light from Thomson scattering. So one is you can make polarization by reflection. So there is something called Brewster's angle, where one of the light get, if unpolarized light falls on a surface with a Brewster's angle, so the reflected light will be polarized. Another way of making polarization is through Thomson scattering. Okay. So basically there are these Stokes Q and U, which we can measure. So this, for the Thomson scattering, we need some quadrupolar anisotropy. If it is, everything is isotropic, we don't see net polarization. But if there is a quadrupolar anisotropy, so it's like if there are hot spot and cold spot, so they have slightly different temperature and different kind of pattern. So when the light, so these are photons, when it gets scattered through electrons, it gets polarized in particular direction. Okay. And in that particular direction, you get maximum polarization, and other part will be absorbed. Okay. So this horizontal part of the blue, it gets absorbed. And similarly, it happens with the other direction. So you don't see this other direction. So you, at the end, you can produce a linear polarization through Thomson scattering. Okay. So basically what our goal is to measure this temperature map to very high accuracy. we can get the power spectrum with very small error bars. We can do same thing for polarization. Okay, so this is something called, so we have Q and U. Okay, but this Stokes Q and U are spin 2 quantities. Okay, so they are coordinate dependent. So it's not easy to work with Stokes Q and U. So what people do is they use Helmholtz theorem and divide any vector field into curl free component and divergence free component, which we call as E and B mode. Okay, so this E and B mode are not local quantity, but they behave similar to the temperature. So what is done here is extracting the E map of the CMB, and this is what the power spectrum look like. You can see this is the model, lambda CDM model. Okay, and so this blue line is drawn from the model with just 6 parameters, and it is plotted from 2 to 200, 500, 2500 multipoles, and it perfectly goes through all the points. And with the same model, when it is done for polarization, what is expected in E mode, this is what is expected, and we can see that the data points are lying on top of it. There may be minor deviation, but to first order, it looks very good. Okay. And similarly for EE power spectrum. So we can, for power spectrum, we have to multiply 2 ALMs. So either we can multiply same ALMs, temperature, we get TT power spectrum. We can take T from ALM from T and E from another ALM from E. That will give me TE power spectrum, and other one is EE power spectrum. Okay. And also we can something we call as lensing potential or lensing power spectrum. So it basically says what is between us and the last cutting surface. Okay. So there is a last cutting surface, so light is coming towards us. So because yes. So because it is, when it is coming towards us, it gets deflected. Okay. And so when it gets deflected, this sum of the E mode leak into B mode. And once we can measure this leakage from E to B mode, we can tell what is between us and the last cutting surface. So in some sense, this map is probing the dark matter distribution of the universe. Okay. So currently this map is not very high significance. We can measure the location of the dark matter, but in future, if you can measure this thing to very high accuracy, we can actually make a full sky map of dark matter. So we can know where these dark matters are, the contribution is more or less, or like how they are distributed over the sky. Okay. So this is, currently it is like this. So this signal to noise ratio is not very good, it's order of 1. But there is a hope that in the future generation CMB experiment, we can get up to 10 sigma measurement. Okay, so let me come to the parameters. So in this lambda CDM model, so there are 6 parameters which we want to constrain. Okay, so one is the omega B H square, which is basically baryon energy density today. So, or in other sense, the amount of ordinary matter. So if you can measure H in some other way and remove that, so then this omega B gives me the idea that how much baryons are contributing to the total energy budget. Okay. Then it can constrain another parameter, which is omega C H square, which is cold dark matter density. Okay. So from CMB, by looking at these peaks, we can constrain how much baryons are there and how much cold dark matter is there. Okay. And then we can also constrain sound horizon or theta. So this is basically, I will, in my next lecture, I will go in details, but basically it tells whether the universe is flat or it is open universe or closed universe. Okay. Or what is the horizon size, like at what size universe this sound wave traveled. Okay, and what angle it makes to us at the present time. So that is the theta. and then it can constrain parameter called tau, okay, which is the optical depth of ionization. So it will tell me like what is the optical depth, or in other ways when this epoch of like when the ionization happened, okay, which is important for the ground-based experiments, which is targeting for epoch of ionization. So these are the 4 main cosmological parameters. And also other 2 cosmological parameters is amplitude of the primordial fluctuation and the scale power spectrum, power law index. So basically there is a, in the CMB, it is coming from this inflation. So so there is a primordial power spectrum which can be captured by these 2 index, A and NS. So A is amplitude of the power spectrum, and NS is the slope of the power spectrum. So it can be 1, it can be less than 1 or greater than 1. And this power spectrum get modified towards while coming to us by this other parameters, which is omega B h square, omega C h square, whether the universe is flat or not, or like optical depth at ionization. So basically, we can constrain this 6 parameter using using the CMB power spectrum. Okay, so what is the basically game? So what we do is we take this map. So we observe at multiple frequency channels, subtract the foreground, make a map, compute power spectrum. Okay. Now we have a model which is CMB fast or CAM. So in model, we can have some set of parameters. We can estimate what is the power spectrum should look like, okay, for given that parameter. We can always vary those parameters. And we want to find when this power spectrum matches with the observations. So like maybe there are 6 parameters. So each one, suppose you want to do varies 1,000 times. So there is a huge parameter set to vary. So there is a smart way of doing this using Monte Carlo Markov chain. So probably it will be covered in your lecture. So that is very smart, or it's like a parameter fitting where you don't search for all the parameters. You start from one point and try to converge faster on those parameters. So the idea is to converge those 6 parameters, okay, in a Bayesian way, which is Monte Carlo Markov chain. And once we know those parameter, best fit parameter, we can just plot what is the model looks like, and we can compare with the data to convince ourselves that that is indeed the case, and then we can tell about those parameters. So that is the goal. Okay. Yeah. So basically here, these are the 6 parameters which are done with Planck. Okay. And then they combine with other experiments like lensing. There is a band acoustic oscillation. Okay, so when you combine all of them, we want to see whether this parameter does not change abruptly. Okay, so this is like say tau. We take tau is 0.09. Okay, when we take other set of combining with other set of data set, we can see that it does not change much. Okay, so this is the cosmological parameters, but we can get all the astrophysical parameters also. So instead of fitting only the CMB, we can take the original maps and fit for the astrophysical parameter like point source, CIB. So this is basically in my last lecture, I will cover those, like what are the different kind of emissions which we can probe. And there is a nice cosmology we can do with even with this set of parameters. So this is basically tracing when the galaxy form, or like what is the galaxy formation rate. All those things we can study using those parameters. Okay, and then there are derived parameters. So these are not measured directly, but like H naught or Z reionization. So it is derived from this set. So there are, you make some assumption about the model and try to derive those parameters. Okay, so yeah, I think I will stop here. So I will try to take questions. So let me see. This, sorry. Yeah. So I think I will stop here. So we have some like 7-8 minutes time for questions. So you can have, you can ask me questions. But basically the idea is that this is like a summary slide where you can see like how we can constrain those cosmological parameters. Now, how each cosmological parameter determine this shape. So that will be. Yeah. So whether this, like how, when you change one of the parameters, how these shapes are, shape get changed. So that I will explain in the next class. Okay. So any questions?
Hello. Am I audible? Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you explain a bit about the foreground parameters that you showed, the second set of parameters that you showed?
Yes.
So you are saying for each of the these A's, there is a corresponding power law that you fit and then obtain these best fit values. Is that the case?
Yes. So this is like a point source. So PS is point source at 100 gigahertz. Okay. So here we can assume a power law shape of the point source power spectrum. So it has some spectral index, or like the L dependence of that, and there is some amplitude. Okay. So this amplitude is fitted for each frequencies. So here we are showing only for 100, 143, and 270. So yeah, so those are the parameters we can fit with the original maps, not with the component separation maps. If you have just the CMB map, we cannot fit that. But if we take the original maps, which has all the contribution from different foreground sources, we can estimate those, how much point source contribute. And then there's a CIB, which is cosmic infrared background anisotropies. So we can calculate this amplitude, and this CIB basically link with the galaxy formation. So this is like the earlier galaxy, we cannot observe it, but we can, this will be like a anisotropy, but it is not in microwave frequency, it is in infrared frequencies. So they have a frequency dependence. So we can measure those amplitude and constrain the model of this galaxy formation. Okay. Then there are Sunaev-Zeldovich effect, which is TSZ, which is thermal Sunaev-Zeldovich effect, and the kinetic Sunaev-Zeldovich effect. So we can constrain those parameters. So there is something called likelihood analysis, where we can, instead of just CMB power spectrum, we can have a model for each of the component. So each component will have some parameter, if it is power law fit. So like CIB is not a power law, but for other things, if it is power law, we can just fit for those parameter in a Bayesian way and extract the best fit parameters. Does it?
Okay. Okay. Thank. And you said we can do cosmology with these parameters. I see these are more like astrophysical parameters that govern effects such as galaxy formation and these point sources and so on, right? So what can we tell about the cosmology from these parameters?
So like there is a thermal Sunaev-Zeldovich effect, which is TSC. Okay. So the TSC, we can basically calculate sigma 8 from CMB observation, which is a derived parameter here. Okay. And from cluster cosmology, we can also derive sigma 8. So we can fit a model of thermal Sunaev-Zeldovich effect and see within the modeling framework what sigma 8 it predicts, and see whether they are consistent with what CMB is telling. So CMB is at a redshift of 1100. We can constrain this parameter, which is basically RMS fluctuation at 8 megaparsec scale. What is the, which basically says what is the shape of the matter power spectrum. Okay. So we can combine these two observations and see whether we can get a consistent picture or not. So there was, now I don't know, but earlier in 2015 release. So for cluster cosmology gives you different value of sigma 8, and CMB gives you different value of sigma 8. So same experiment gives very different value of sigma 8. Okay. Yeah, and the CIB is mostly galaxy formation. So it's like astrophysics. It's not cosmology. That is right. But I don't remember it, like why I said that. Yes, but like Sunyaev-Zelkovich effect, kinetic Sunyaev-Zelkovich effect, these are important for cosmology.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, I have a very basic question. In the CMB power spectrum, in the y-axis, we have plotted L into L plus 1, CL by 2 pi. So my question is how to calculate this CL factor? How can we calculate this CL factor?
So that is what I explained. No? Let me see. Going back. Okay, so you have this. Okay. So what you do is you have the temperature fluctuation map, right? Delta T. You decomposed into these ALMs. You decompose into the spherical harmonics, you get the spherical harmonic coefficients. Okay. So like tomorrow lecture, I will, or maybe day after tomorrow, so I will tell you there is in the software, there is a software called HillPix, which does that. So it will give you this spherical harmonic coefficients. So these YLMs are fixed number. Okay. So they don't change. So once you give delta T, it gives you back ALM. Now this CL is basically in this definition, it is written as ALM transpose, ALM complex of that, complex conjugate of that, average over this bracket for many different realization. Okay, so this temperature is a real quantity, okay, but the spherical harmonic basis is complex. So these ALMs are a complex quantity, okay, but the power spectrum should be real. So that's why we are taking ALM complex conjugate. Now, instead of averaging over all different realization, because we have one sky, we cannot do that. So what we can do is we can do 1 over 2L plus 1 sum over M ALM complex conjugate. So we just sum over all the M's and divide. So for each L, M goes from minus L to plus L. So there will be 2L plus 1 terms. So we divide by 2L plus 1, we get a power spectrum. So for any given map, we can calculate the power spectrum. So anyway, that will be part of the hand-on session where I tell you how to compute power spectrum. That is based on the code, but you can write your own code to calculate the power spectrum. And also one other thing I thought about doing it is like from the mass sky. So basically for full sky, this thing work, but usually we don't have the full sky because of the galactic residuals. So from the mass sky, how you calculate the power spectrum.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Any more questions?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, can you go to the last slide where you did the parameter estimation from the CL curve?
Yes. This one?
Yeah, here. So here, basically, this is a parameter estimation problem, right? Where you are estimating the parameters, the baryon density and the dark matter density and all. And these are the data that you have, which is the CL values at different L, right? And you have a model of the CL from the parameters, and you are trying to fit the curve and estimate the parameter, right?
This is the data we have.
Yeah. So we are trying to fit the model with that data, right? We have a model of the power spectrum from the parameters, and we are trying to fit the data, right? Is that it?
So we have a model where we give this parameter as input.
Mm-hmm.
We generate this.
Yeah.
We don't know what is the best fit parameters, which gives me exactly this curve. Okay.
Okay.
So I have the data points, which is the blue points, okay, with the error bars. But
Yeah.
forget about this solid line which goes through the points. So I don't know what is a solid line. Okay. So what I want to find is the solid line which goes through the data points. Now there are so many parameters. So I don't know what is the best fit parameters. I can randomly vary all the 6 parameters and see where it fits. But that is computationally very intensive. Okay. So what is done is here is the Monte Carlo Markov chain implementation, where we say we define a likelihood function, where we basically in map space or in the CL space, we say we want a CL which is matches with this CL. So then the chi-square will be low and the likelihood will be high. Okay.
Yeah. So my question is like for doing the Bayesian estimation, you need the likelihood, right? So likelihood is basically how to simulate the data from the model. So my question is, what is the information about the error that we have in the data of the CL curve, like the blue points? Like
we have this error bars, right?
Is it like Gaussian or something? Like what will be the error? Like what will be the error between the model and the data?
So yeah, so this ALMs, so the temperature fluctuations are Gaussian distribution to first order. So it means that ALMs are Gaussian distribution. Okay, but this CL is ALM star, and so that means it is not a Gaussian distribution. For large value of L, because we are summing over large value of M, it becomes Gaussian. So if you look at larger value of L, say above 50, so here we can assume that these error bars are Gaussian. Okay, but here it is not Gaussian, it has a chi-square distribution. So you can see that the error bar in this lower end is smaller. You can get, it's hazy here, but you can get, if you look at the Planck best fit power spectrum, you will find this on the internet. You will see that in one side, the error bar is much larger than the other side. So it is asymmetric and it is like a chi-square distribution.
Yeah, so basically it comes from like, since those are the Gaussian random variables and CL are the square of the sum of the square of the Gaussian random variable, it should be chi-square. But I'm still not getting why the error bar also should be chi-square. Like the CLs should be chi-square distribution, the realization CLs, but why the error bars also should be chi-square?
The CL, if you do the math, it actually, or probably I can do it, it is proportional to CL.
Okay, the error is also proportional to CL.
So the sigma of CL is 2 square root of 2 by 2L plus 1 times CL.
Okay, okay, thanks. Okay.
It's just divided by L. So if you have to go to large L limit, it becomes
Okay, thanks. Thanks for letting me.
Hello, can you hear me? So you made a statement about the dark matter structure with the help of weak lensing somewhere. So can you please explain that statement again?
Okay. So what happens is that, so the CMB photons are emitting from this last cutting surface and coming towards us. Okay. But because there is a matter in between us and the last cutting surface, so maybe we consider as a dark matter. So this photon has to go through this gravitational well produced by this dark matter distribution. Okay. So there is you heard about this gravitational lensing, right? So if the photon is coming from a background, so it bends, light bend. So here what happens is that it bends slightly. So this is like not a very large thing, but it is, that's why the name is weak lensing. So it deflects from its original position. Okay, so from an observer, if you're looking at this example, so suppose it is coming from this black solid line, it gets slightly deflected because of the intermediate matter. When we look back, we locate this photon to slightly different positions. Okay. So now when we do this decomposition into E and B mode, so in E and B mode, we look at the linear polarization pattern and construct this E and B mode map. So if because of the deflection, some of the E mode leaks into B mode and some of the B mode leaks into E mode. But the amplitude of B mode is much smaller than the E mode. So leakage from B to E is not a problem, but leakage from E to B, it produces artificial signal. So that is name goes after lensing B mode signal. So we can measure that lensing B mode now to very high accuracy. So from that lensing B mode signal, we can infer what is like, we can basically measure how much each point is deflected. So we can construct a matter contained between us and the last scanning surface. Okay, so we don't know from where it is coming, but we can make a matter distribution map. Okay, and since we know that the dark matter contribution is larger than the baryonic matter, okay, so our galaxies, they contribute very less to the energy budget. Okay, it's like 0.002%. Okay, or like, I'm sorry, it's 0.002, but in percentage it is like 0.2%. So it's a dark matter which is mostly dominating, which is extend outside the galaxy. So whatever matter distribution map we are making is basically the map of the dark matter. Does it answer?
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone? Okay. Okay. So then we can stop here.
Okay, so thanks, Professor Domingos, for the nice introduction to CMB. And if we have no more questions, then we will again start at 11:30 tomorrow.